Thank you, Andy. Well, what an amazing morning. I feel like I've already been inspired, encouraged, and filled up. But I know what you're thinking. To get to the really important stuff, where can I get one of those amazing scab goatees that cool woman in the suit is sporting? And I will tell you, you can be a woman in your 40s, slightly too tall, slightly too clumsy, and take up rollerblading. And then spectacularly wipe out in Burgess Park, just at the point where you were just beginning to feel like maybe you were looking pretty cool. Everyone's going to have them in 6 months. I was offered the title, Everything is Sacred, and I thought, yeah, that sounds good. And I went away and sat with it, and came to the conclusion that I don't actually think everything is sacred. Certainly not every human action, every human choice. That we are capable of desecration. And often what we are desecrating is each other. Because I believe that everyone is sacred. In the sense, as we have heard so beautifully, that everyone is made in the image of God. Every human being is a walking, blinking icon of the divine, and therefore worthy of protection, worthy of care. And this idea, as Tom Holland's name just popped up, he has argued that this is a distinctive inheritance of the Jewish and Christian traditions, that everyone is made in the image of God. But this is a hard thing to believe, right? I actually don't think it's self-evident. I don't think it is obvious. It is not something you can necessarily reason yourself to naturally. Most cultures down the centuries did not at least start there. And our culture is hell-bent, seems like the right word, on making us forget it. It is a hard thing to believe. In this world, it is a hard thing to believe in these bodies. Because humans have this unfortunate quirk that scientists call homophily, and John Yates calls people like me syndrome. And people like me syndrome is one of the best evidence findings of social psychology, and it is that all human beings have a deep preference for people like themselves. That we feel most comfortable and most safe with people who remind us of ourselves, with people who agree with us, with people who reflect back our worldview to us. And if you are meeting new people this morning, I want you to just keep a little mental tally. If you're meeting new people that you've never met before throughout the day, just keep a little mental tally. Who are the people that you instinctively feel warm towards and think, oh, I'm really glad to meet them. They seemed great. And who are the people that you're like, yeah, nice to meet you, just gonna go get a coffee. And when you get to the end of the day, just have a little think about what they were like. And if you are like the vast majority of the population, the people that you instinctively feel warm towards are the people who are reminding you of yourself. Human beings are adorably, ridiculously narcissistic, essentially. We scan the world like Narcissus for fragments of our own reflection. And you can immediately, we can think of all the big issues where this causes big problems, right? But it's ridiculous things. Like, if I meet someone with the same glasses as me, I'll be like, oh, hi! I was walking down the train the other day, I looked down, someone was using the same notebook and the same pen brand that I am deeply loyal to, and literally, I promise you, this was my internal monologue. They seem like a good person. This quirk in us can obviously go bad in dark places. It's not always bad. It's all right to hang out with people who like the same music as us. It's all right to love our families. It's all right to love our nations. But we need to keep an eye on it. And I think there is a deeply uncomfortable thing in the Christian tradition, that it refuses to baptize our people like me syndrome and is continually asking us to challenge it. Jesus does this in the way that he crosses divides and crosses tribes. And he does this in the way that he calls us to love not just our neighbors, and there is a pretty expansive definition of neighbors in Scripture, but our enemies. When we think about how we want to engage with culture, how we might want to renew culture, this feels to me like a biblical distinctive that we need to hold on to with all our hearts. It is a live wire in the circuit board of Scripture, and there is power in it. Because we live in an age where we are being encouraged to baptize our people like me syndrome. We'll be encouraged when we feel uncomfortable with people who are different from us, who disagree with us, to take that discomfort and let it move to disdain. To take that little bit of anxiety and let it move to anger. Kate was talking so beautifully about our characters and that the way we engage is as important as how we engage. And we are being formed by a culture that tells us not to love our enemies, but to dehumanize them and to hate them. I know that so many people associated with the Everything Network feel this. That we are called not just to critique culture, but to create it, as Andy Crouch says. Not to blame other people for all the failings of the world, but try and build something better. And the awkward challenge is that we will fail to do all of those unless we root ourselves in this fundamental challenge that I do not want to hear. I really don't want to hear that I'm supposed to love my enemies. There will be someone in your life right now, it might be in your workplace, it might be in something in the public square, it might be in your church, heaven forfend, that just thinking of them makes you feel a bit tense, makes you feel a bit angry, makes you roll your eyes. And the scriptures tell us that anyone who feels like they are our enemies or they might become one if we let them, we're not just supposed to tolerate them. We're not just supposed to ignore them. We're certainly not supposed to go to war with them or attack them. We are supposed to love them. Love your enemies and bless those who persecute you. Pray for them. Pray for them. And I'm preaching to my own soul here. Because we live in times where the beautiful witness of Scripture, the renewal of culture, the sense that God is for the flourishing of all things, can, if we let it, get caught up in dynamics that are not marked by love of neighbor alone, and certainly not love of enemy. That this is a scriptural bedrock, that those monks, that the civil rights movement, when we look back over history at these small groups who actually renewed culture, who actually convinced everyone and convinced anyone that things could be better, they were grounded in a steadiness, rooted in knowing their own belovedness, the fact they didn't need to defend themselves or be defensive, but they could love. And this incredibly difficult, incredibly annoying part of Scripture is not just, I think, biblically central, and therefore anyone who's trying to take the Bible seriously needs to try and take it seriously. It is also strategically powerful. I launched with a team, The Sacred, in 2017, precisely in reaction to these trends that Tim's been speaking about, this sense that it was getting harder and harder to be around people that we disagree with, or who were different from us, or were setting off our people like me syndrome. I didn't know what to do. Be confused. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you is like such a helpful posture. And one thing I felt was my calling, and we all have different bits of the work to do, right? Was to work out how to cross some of those divides and seek to understand and maybe even seek to love some people that I certainly felt like could be my enemies, that disagreed with me on some very deep things, that I knew did not respect my views, did not respect my beliefs, did not respect where I was coming from. And listening to them sounds like a soft thing to do. When we feel like we're in the battle of ideas, when a culture war is raging, the idea that we could stop and listen to people not like ourselves, we could stop and listen to people who we might want to believe are our enemies, seems soft, but it's not, I promise. David Ausberger says, being listened to is as close to being loved for the average person as to be indistinguishable. This is my experience, that I can go into an interview with someone who I do not want to speak to, and that's like medium proportion of my guests, which is why it's not a standard podcast. And I can feel tense and annoyed and be arguing with them in my head. And the discipline of just asking question after question and hearing their reasoning and hearing, importantly, their story and where they've come from and the pain that they are carrying, transform them before my very eyes from someone who I might want to believe is an enemy to someone I sometimes can begin to see a little bit as God sees, with a tiny little echo of the belovedness that God sees in them. And this doesn't mean that we can't disagree with people. It doesn't mean that we can't stand up in public and put a case for the dignity of life. It doesn't mean that we have to affirm and agree with every position or every person. Absolutely not. But it is a posture that helps us do that without losing our souls. It helps us do that in a way that I believe helps keep us rooted in that anchor of Scripture. And it also is strategically massively more effective. Because all of the social psychology shows, and it's not an accident given that I think this is a reasonable inference from the New Testament too, that people change their minds when they feel loved. Most people only change their minds. It's actually really hard to change someone's mind. Most people only change their minds when they are in a friendship or they're listening to someone who they think might be their friend if they met them. We make so many of our decisions based on the defense of relationships or attempting to gain relationships, which again is not an accident because we are made in the image of a Trinitarian God. We are defined by relationships as humans. And so when we approach people who may well be our enemies without that attempt to love them and bless them and pray for them as we are called to do, it is more likely to just bounce off. And you can see this. Enemies don't change each other's minds. It's called mutual radicalization in the data. Someone who can approach you and disagree with you with a posture of steadiness and belovedness and hospitality and, yes, confidence in who we are and what we've received is a messenger that more people are able to hear. And so if you want to change culture, if you have some ideas, you want to be in the public square, if frankly, if you want anyone to listen to you and to what you believe, let me tell you, listening first, seeking to understand first, letting God soften your heart towards the people that you either think or you have been told are your enemies. Although Giles Fraser says, we're not called to have no enemies, just to love them. So it's all right to still disagree with people and think that their ideas are really, really bad. But when we approach them with that posture, when we're able to have that discipline of listening, curiosity, hospitality, and encounter, the effectiveness of our work for cultural renewal, the fruitfulness for our cultural renewal will go right up. And more importantly, I think we will hold on to our souls. Not everything is sacred. Not every human choice is sacred. Many of mine are not. But what if everyone is? And I'll end with this. When I am in arguments with God about this, how can you ask me to love X, X, and X? How can you ask me to love this person that has hurt me or despised me or poured contempt on me? How can you ask me to love this person perpetuating injustice? How can you ask me to love this person? I come back to 1 John 4. Love each other as I have loved you. And how has God loved us? While we were yet enemies of God, while we were yet far off, he turned his face towards us, and he came towards us, and he opened his arms of love, and he said, come here. Thank you very much.